Welcome to episode 66 here on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Our thumbnail today, the year of the backup goalie. And I know you're all watching what's going on a daily business, the NHL daily business of the salary cap and what it means. I know there's many of you that sit there and go, what the hell is going on here? I don't even understand this thing. And there's a good chance that you won't. But we're seeing it on a day-to-day basis. And we just saw it again. The Leafs were quite comfortable going to a three-man rotation. The talk of when Frederik Andersen was not going to play for the Leafs, he wasn't even going to back up. He's just going to go back, practice, have the off day. Aaron Dell comes in and sits on the bench while Jack Campbell goes. Well, that plan didn't work. Aaron Dell claimed today off waivers to not the Edmonton Oilers, where he was destined to be, but the New Jersey Devils, who had been left a huge void with Corey Crawford announcing his retirement. So let's not waste any time here. Listen, bring in former general manager, president of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Doug Maclean. Mac, when you watch now teams and their goaltending situation, I think it is appropriate to start Monday saying this may be the year of the backup.
Yeah, and we, I mean, how soft are we becoming that guys can't practice? They can't sit on the bench. I mean, come on. Like, what is going on here?
Well, no.
But anyway, look, you have the luxury of having a third guy like Dell. You get to do that. Good on New Jersey. They needed a backup. Edmonton would not be happy right now because everybody thought he'd end up in Edmonton, and they're in a desperate situation. So you're right. The backup is becoming a critical thing.
So more than anything, more than just whether or not you're soft and you need the whole night off if you're a goaltender, Mac, this is not what this is all about. This is about
game 2, Nick.
Mac.
This is game 2, and you need to go on the bench.
This is
hit with a puck.
This is game 2, and teams desperately trying to figure out what their cap is and how it affects them on a daily basis. And we saw the Leafs lose Dell because they were in a horrific situation with Nick Robertson getting hurt.
Right.
And they needed flexibility off their cap because they wanted to call up Enville.
Yeah.
He's got $1.5 million. They needed to come up with essentially $1.5 million. How do you do that? You lose Dell at $800,000 and you lose Spezza at $700,000. Now Spezza cleared waivers. Spezza was in a situation where it was abundantly clear. The message was sent. I'm not playing anywhere except Toronto. Don't claim me. I will retire. That was enough to work. Whether or not anybody would claim him anyways remained to be seen. But he is now given the Leafs the flexibility. He's still in the plans. He still will play. But what this has enabled Toronto to do with Spezza is get him essentially off the salary cap and into a taxi squad situation. And when he only plays, Mac, will his $700,000 go up against the cap? It won't go up against off days. So what you're going to see pretty much from here on in is Spezza called up and then sent down to the taxi squad. When he's down on the taxi squad, his money doesn't go on the cap.
But how do they call him up?
He does not need to clear waivers.
No, I know that, but
10 games.
I mean, what do they do with his $700,000 when they call him up? They've got to have the space.
They do, but they only need space for that one day.
That's right. So it's dollars
minimal
per day. Yeah,
it's minimal.
It's minimal. Like it's $5,000 is what they need in cap space to bring him up for the day. They need roughly $5,000 in cap
whatever it is. He'll only go against the cap on the days that he plays. And when he doesn't, I assume he's going to have this yo-yo thing going. And that's not just him. I'm sure that's many teams now that are going to have to find a way to juggle this thing. But
and luckily, like I looked at a young guy that's on a taxi squad with one team, and because of the way his contract's structured, if he comes up for a day, it's $15,000 for an NHL team to bring this youngster, a first-year pro, up because of his bonus structure. So it's kind of, debilitating to give that kid a chance. You're not giving that kid a chance, obviously, unless you're desperate. So interesting on the backup. So look, Craig Anderson was an interesting situation. We talked about Craig Anderson a few times in this show. After he signed his PTO, I think there was some teams might have been interested in Craig Anderson. And all of a sudden, if he wouldn't have signed in Washington, how many opportunities would he have right now? We heard rumblings. Jimmy Howard was asked by Ken Holland. I mean, obviously, some of these guys that are on the sidelines now could get some good opportunities.
And just to touch again on the Toronto Maple Leafs, in a perfect world, I think they would have liked to move Frederik Andersen. We know the Leafs had tried, and they would have loved to move off his $5 million and given them more flexibility, and perhaps been in a scenario where if it wasn't Dell with Campbell, maybe it could have been Craig Anderson. Right. Maybe it could have been someone else.
Right.
But I look last night, Mac. I look at the Chicago Blackhawks, and I can't imagine what's going through Pat Kane's head when he looks between the pipes. And that's not to be disrespectful to the guys that they have, but the reality is Chicago doesn't have NHL goaltending right now. And again, where would they have been, with Craig Anderson or Howard, if they would have addressed it when they should have addressed it, and that's the offseason?
Well, you know what? And that's a team that's not going to make the playoffs or had no chance anyway of making the playoffs, but a little different for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So you say, like Freddie Anderson, rumblings, they tried to trade him. So now Jack Campbell comes in, plays well in Ottawa, I guess. I mean, did he really have to play well? I mean, Ottawa didn't piss a drop in the game. And now Jack Campbell moves to the forefront. Jack Campbell has certainly not had an illustrious career behind him. Toronto's a contender. So we believe first place in the north is what we've said. So now you've got Toronto as hopefully a contender with a guy in goal who people like, but hasn't certainly got it done long term in the NHL as a number one goaltender. I mean, are you going to be that quick to go buy Freddie Anderson? It'll be interesting to watch this scenario as it unfolds. It's great now because Jack Campbell won a game where he had no action.
But you got to know where it's heading, okay? It's not hard to read the tea leaves. They love Jack Campbell, okay?
Right.
He's Kyle's guy.
They love anybody from Sault Ste. Marie. I wish to hell I would have worked in Sault Ste. Marie.
Remember Babcock with Freddie Anderson? Freddie's my guy.
Right.
Freddie ain't getting any love out of the management right now or the coaching staff.
No.
Jack Campbell's the guy. We know. And I think Freddie knows it as well. And I think you can sense that Frederik Anderson might feel like a guy on an island right now.
Oh yeah, and his contract's expiring
big time.
And Jack Campbell, like you hear lots of great things about Jack Campbell, and you hope that it works out. But when you have a contending team with a goaltender who certainly hasn't proven that he can run with the number one job in his career thus far, maybe he can. Let's hope he can. Yeah. But it's a scary situation. And Freddie hasn't been able to get it done in the playoffs. So the fans, management, everybody is upset. We'll see. Freddie Anderson was damn good in the regular season. Not so great in the playoffs. Yeah.
Well, Toronto won't be the only team in a cap crunch. Mac, Nick Robertson, out what we believe is long-term. Okay. Someone explain to me why this 19-year-old kid who's 5'9", 160 pounds is in this hockey game. Mac, he's not NHL ready. He's not there. People want to talk about the goals that he scored in junior, blah, blah, blah. The guy's in there. Is there an issue with the Leafs needing depth scoring? Is that big of an issue? You want to put a 19-year-old kid? He's hurt. It didn't have to happen, Mac.
Look, it's, they fell in love. Look, Nick Robertson is a really good young player. and he's got great potential.
But he's 160 pounds going up against men.
And he's got an upside down the road. But you have to have a different mentality. And I didn't have the luxury of doing this as a GM. I did it as a coach in Florida. When you have a potential championship type team, your thinking has got to be a little different when it comes to these guys. There's no panic. You've got to get your veterans in that right frame of mind so that they're ready. It's like Hoagland in Vancouver. Vancouver's got pressure on them to have a good run. Hoaglander's good. He's a great young player. He's another guy. When JT Miller comes in, what arrangements do they make with that kid who's got to play high in the lineup? Nick Robertson can't play in the fourth line,
I watched this Drake Batherson at 6'1", 6'2". He's got like 40 pounds. He took a healthy run at him. Okay. Yeah. And he saw a vulnerable guy against the wall, not scared to go and run him. Now Robinson's season could perhaps be in jeopardy. And it's just, I don't to this moment, I don't get Nick Robertson thinking he's physically strong enough to play in this league. I don't. Let me tell you
what happens, Nick. When you're a GM and you draft young guys, you're anxious to get them into the lineup. You're anxious to give them a chance to play. And you know what? I've made mistakes with it, and lots of GMs fall in love with their guys and they want to get them in. Look, he come up last year, gave them a couple of good games, but this is a long-term process for a young kid. Especially in a 56-game season where there's pressure every night to perform.
Yeah, just to still touch a little bit on perhaps the backup role that we're seeing. Chris Drieger comes in, gets a win for Florida, backup kind of guy. I watched, the often hyped up Crosby versus Ovechkin and Casey DeSmith come in. And
big win for him.
Huge win, Mac.
Huge in the shootout. He was solid, great in the shootout.
Tristan, that was Tristan Jarry's net on the weekend. Not DeSmith, but Jarry has a horrible time against the Philadelphia Flyers, and here you got Mike Sullivan going, "No, I'm putting in DeSmith." And does that tell you something that this is a shortened series and every season and every game's 4 points?
And you saw panic when teams lost 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, or you got Columbus tonight going into Detroit, or playing in Detroit right now, as a matter of fact, and all of a sudden they're desperate for a win. You got the Dubois cloud over you. Every team in the league has got a little bit of a cloud over them if they've started off slow in this shortened season.
Yeah. Look at the Islanders and the Rangers. Good on the Rangers for coming back and saving face. I can't imagine the shit the players got after that first game. And then the Islanders couldn't follow it up. Varlamov gets hurt in warm-up, Mac, and everything points in the direction he's fine. I'll never claim to be a goalie or know what it feels like to take a high hard one in warm-up, but didn't look that bad. I'm just, Sorokin's a young and up-and-comer who everybody believes is going to be the next thing. Shesterkin, has a horrible first game. Sorokin didn't look great for the Islanders. In some scenarios that we just mentioned, maybe the backup goalie comes in and does well, like DeSmith, but there's others that could still struggle.
Yeah. And look, we've seen it in an 82-game season where you've got to have an unbelievable 1-2 punch. And now with this season, 56 games in like 118 days, your backup has got to be on top of his game because they're going to have to play them. They're going to have to use them. And especially the way this is in this so-called bubble where, everybody's got to be sharp, and it's not going to be easy.
Wow.
It's not going to be easy on the players. It really isn't.
We've had some entertaining games. I won't take that out, but for the most part, Mac, I'm not watching very compelling hockey right now. I watched, and we know Ottawa still is going to have their struggles, but there are some teams that could not make tape-to-tape passes on the weekend. They couldn't string 3 in a row.
They're playing at about 71% for me.
72. Isn't that their
72.
salary? 72%. In saying that, Mac, 10 days of practice with no exhibition games. All we're seeing is a byproduct of maybe you need a few exhibition games just to tune it up. But right now, I think we're just seeing a byproduct of 3 weeks ago, these guys, sucking a few cold ones back.
Well, and now you've got a situation, everybody's playing double games almost in every city. So you go into, let's take Columbus. They go into Nashville. They're there for 4 days. Then they finish those. Then they go to Detroit now, and they're going to be in Detroit for 3 days. And, you're in a bubble where it's not like on the road where you can go out to dinner and you can go around for your walk around town. How tough is it right now for these players? And then how does that translate onto the ice? I think it's going to be really tough. No, it's not the bubble in Toronto or Edmonton, but this is a different bubble that still is not easy.
Well, and when it's not going well, and then you have the lull of the building with no fans, and that energy drops substantially.
Yeah. So I can understand where it's been, a little bit sluggish at times. Even the play-by-play guys, they're in a studio back home because they're not allowed to travel home. Man, are they missing their red wine on those private jet flights? So they're in the studio at home and they're whining because they're missing out on all the luxuries,
Is it they as in everyone, or perhaps maybe just Columbus Blue Jackets?
No, I was talking to an NBA TV guy, and he's missing out dramatically on his red wine on the flights. So
okay,
anyway,
we talk often about on ice issues. Well, we started off with the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course, losing Aaron Dell, goaltender, who is now a member of the New Jersey Devils. But when you have to deal with things off the ice, Mac, that maybe could have been avoided, is that the scenario now where we're looking at the Florida Panthers? Keith Yandle, if we took a survey right now with pretty knowledgeable hockey people, how many would have known Keith Yandle had a consecutive streak of 963 going into this season?
Unbelievable.
Not many, Mac.
Not many.
But how many know now that when the Florida Panthers tried to shut him down and it didn't work?
It's the biggest news. I haven't seen it in the papers here, and I'm living in Florida, but it's big news everywhere else. I'm not sure how big it is here. But you know what? It's an unfortunate situation. You got a new general manager that comes in. You got one of your key guys. I didn't hear Joe Quenneville talking a whole lot about not wanting him in the lineup. But, obviously behind the scenes action by the rookie GM, and it hasn't gone over very well.
Mac, the writing was on the wall. He was not supposed to play. Okay.
Right.
He wasn't even practicing with a big club until the weekend.
This is one of your most veteran players.
He was done. He was kicked to the curb. It was over.
Right.
And then in 48 hours, that guy goes back onto the first power play. Now, I am told, Mac, that this was all ownership driven, that he needed to come in and address it. And my understanding is Keith Yandle and his agent got an apology from the management team in Florida.
Yeah.
So now, where do you go from there if you're Bill Zito?
But you've got to put the background in there. You know something you're not telling us here. I mean, obviously he was put on the sidelines because they wanted to trade him. They had a deal in place and he wouldn't waive his no movement. Is that accurate?
Well, the talk is Boston, Islanders, maybe a three-way, maybe Yandle ending up with the Boston Bruins. I'm sure they would have had to eat some money on that, the Florida Panthers. But didn't come to fruition. It appears that he stood his ground, and I don't know where Florida goes from here on in, but I think ownership wasn't pleased the way it was handled.
Well, you know what? When you're a GM, you've got to make sure that you have the things in order. You've got to make sure that there's agreement before this gets out, before you get to a situation where you're going to make a guy a healthy scratch, where you move him to the taxi squad, you make threats to a veteran player on your team. You've got to have your ducks in order before you go down that road. And I remember, look, I called Todd Marchand into my office and told him I traded him to Anaheim. And he said, I'm not going. I've got a no trade. And I said, okay, that's fine.
So when did you decide that Todd was no longer in the plans and you needed to go in that direction?
It wasn't in the plans. We had a trade worked out. We were trading him for Fedorov. And he came in. I had the deal done with Anaheim.
Okay.
And I called him in to tell him I was trading him and that he had a no trade. And I said, hey, and he said, no, I won't go. That's what he told me. I won't go. And I said, okay.
Was that early? Was that early in the season, middle of the season, late in the season? And I want to know
halfway through the season or more.
Okay. So
I said, well, that's fine. I'll put you on waivers.
My point in all of this is you needed to know at some point you needed to address that, right? The issue. So my point is that Keith Yandle, when did they decide that he's not in the plans? And did it go as far as in the summer? I got to assume that you guys talk daily, 7 days a week. Doesn't matter what time over a 12-month cycle. You have a pretty clear idea of who you like and who you don't like and who you could potentially move. My whole point in all of this is, why wasn't this addressed in the offseason? Keith Yandle didn't surprise you 10 days into training camp, and then you decided to move him. So why wasn't this looked after during the lull of the offseason?
Well, I don't know when they decided they wanted to move him. We've seen so many transactions with the Panthers. I don't know when Zito came up with the idea they're going to move him. But to me, the surprising thing is, Nick, if in fact you call in the player Yandle and say, look, I've got a trade, I'm moving you to Boston, and Yandle says, no, I'm not going, why wouldn't he want to go to Boston? I mean, why wouldn't he want to go to a team that has a chance? Because
he doesn't want to move, because his family's happy, because this is where I picked, and most importantly, you gave me that clause, and now you want me to renege on it. So you know what? Screw you.
Yeah, no, I know, and that's the power of the no movement. And I hate to say I had a lot to do with that coming into place, but it's the power that they have.
Marchand, did you ever, in your wildest dreams, while you were negotiating with Anaheim, think that Marchand could shut this down because it's his right? So I better get ahead of this a little earlier.
I couldn't believe that he wouldn't want to go to a contending team. That's you
misreading. That's you misreading.
But I had to get the deal done. I wasn't going to call Marchand in and say, look, I'm thinking of trading you. I might be able to trade you. I wasn't doing that, because if the deal fell through, I got a disgruntled guy. So I wasn't talking to Marchand about it till I had the deal done.
But the problem is with that, Mac, is it's cart before the horse on two sides.
No, I know it. It's a tough situation.
So why wouldn't you call Marchand's agent and say, listen, there's a chance that there's good interest out there, and if this happens, we need to know whether you're going to move it or not, or else I don't want to waste my time. Or you start working the agent from there on in, and you start.
You
start leaning on him.
I could have done that, but I just simply didn't want Marchand to know. Yeah. I had brought him in. He'd been there a year. He was on a 4-year deal or whatever, and I just didn't want him. Sort of being disgruntled, and it backfired on me. It backfired on Florida.
100%. And this is where
it didn't backfire on me, because I had the right to put him on waivers. Florida didn't have that.
Well, you had an ace to play. You had a card to play.
Waivers, right. But I had said to Brian Burke, If he won't go, I'm putting him on waivers, and you've got to claim him. Berkey went underground on me for a couple of days, but he peeped his head out from the, and took him, but he wasn't happy.
Well, we look around the league and we look at a few teams that stand out for us in terms of pressure points. Yandle's got it with Florida. Pierre-Luc Dubois has pressure point on Columbus. And we watched Patrick Laine, who looked fabulous in his opening game against Calgary, and now come into Toronto. He was on the ice today. A little bit of speculation about leaving practice early the other day, but all indications are he's going to play against the Leafs. He's also got shovel day off in the Winnipeg Jets in a little bit of a predicament in terms of where this ultimately goes. Everybody believes that he's destined to be traded, but when you watch Patrick Laine, as I did against Calgary, steamroll them and score goals, make plays, defend a teammate, Mac, how do you trade this guy?
Well, look, there's pressure on Winnipeg Jets to make the playoffs in the Canadian division. I mean, they bowed out last year to Calgary because of the injuries to Scheifele and Laine. They've got Chevy's in a tough spot. How do you move him unless you improve your team? And how do you move a guy like Laine and improve your team short term? It's a big, big trade for Kevin Cheveldaev. Trouba was one thing. This is a whole different story for the Winnipeg Jets. And you don't move them till you have the right deal. And that will not be easy. Not easy. No different than Columbus.
God, I'm just watching this whole thing, and I've watched it for the last few years. And this didn't happen by accident. This was it was funneled into this scenario because of the decisions that you made. But I'm just wondering, can there be a scenario where Patrick Laine saves this and he's the guy that actually ends up staying in Winnipeg?
I think it's such a tough deal to make it work for Winnipeg that it would not surprise me that he stays there.
Okay.
And get the new deal done.
Chevy,
the one thing Cheveldaev has done is he has been Mr. Patient. He is not going to panic.
But
think back to the Evander Kane. He's had some tough situations, and he doesn't panic. And
it doesn't matter. It's not about him being patient or not. It's a matter of running out of time on your salary cap, Mac.
Well, I get that, but
he needs a new contract. He can go to arbitration. Could be awarded, Mac, $8.5-9 million.
No, I know.
It's just you can't have that.
Yeah.
There's only one scenario that Patrick Laine could actually stay in Winnipeg. You bail on Blake Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
You decide that that's the contract that you want to unload. And, how old's Blake Wheeler? I think he's got three more years left at
what, 6?
8, Mac. 8.
Scary.
8.
Well,
and
look,
Blake Wheeler's 33, 34 years old. Patrick Laine comes in at what, 23, 22, 23. I mean,
I know, and it's all over the league. I mean, I was thinking of looking at Tampa Bay the other day with McDonough's deal, and with the cap problems they have, and that McDonough deal, who's still a heck of a player for them. So he's a bit like the Wheeler situation, very similar. That's a good point. Good by you. Who gave you that scoop?
Mac, professional broadcaster. Come on.
I like it.
Just read the tea leaves, man.
Yeah, I know. And I don't disagree with it. And hey, Wheeler is a valuable guy for them. The problem is for Chevy is they have to win in Winnipeg. There's pressure to win in Winnipeg. And you move Wheeler out for young guys and picks, that makes it really tough. Unless they can move Wheeler and get the right defenseman for him, then I think they'd be in good shape. They got pretty good depth up front. I like that.
And it's not hard. It's not hard to figure out too why Laine is so pissed off. Okay, he's been one of the better goal scorers in the NHL. He's a young superstar, and he can't play with the number one centerman on the team so far in his career. Right. I mean, that's it. And in many ways, it's if you made your commitment to Wheeler, if that's where the money's going in the next 3 years, then Patrik Laine says, get me the hell out of here. I'll go get my money. I'll go get my money and my number one centerman somewhere else.
Well, because, and it's good. I think it's a great point by you. I think that makes lots of sense. You hate to lose Wheeler, but I think they could desperately use a defenseman coming back in a Wheeler deal, bump Laine up. You've got some good young forwards there within the group. Hopefully they can move Roslovic maybe to Pittsburgh, and they can pick up somebody in that deal that makes sense for them. But it's really tough on the GM because he's got to win games. And these are big. Blake Wheeler deal is a big deal. A Laine deal is a monstrosity of a deal.
Wow. And the issue too, and people want to link Patrik Laine to Columbus for Pierre-Luc Dubois, is as great as Patrik Laine is, and Mac, he's 6'5". I mean, the way he can get up and down the ice, the way he can move laterally, he in many ways he reminds me of a Mario Lemieux, where he can move the puck laterally 6-8 feet without necessarily losing a stride or pulling it in for that amazing snapshot. And they don't grow on trees, much like Pierre-Luc Dubois at 6'3", doesn't grow on trees at center. But you can't, if you're Columbus, move out a number one centerman for a number one winger.
Not a chance.
You can't. And if you're Patrik Laine, who are you going to play with if that happens?
What about Columbus looking at taking a Wheeler? I mean, they desperately need scoring. They've got some good young defensemen there. They could move back in Wheeler's situation. It might work.
Now you're on my page. My page.
It might work. But Wheeler's a big price, but there's some good defensemen. And I'm not talking Werenski. I'm not talking Jones. They're not in that conversation. But there's some pretty good defensemen below them as well.
So the Winnipeg Jets.
Good young forwards.
Yep. The Winnipeg Jets and the Leafs, 7:00 tonight, Eastern Standard Time. We got 10 games. Mac, you hearing anything on your Columbus Blue Jackets and the Red Wings so far?
I haven't.
About 10 minutes in. We'll get an update.
It.
We'll get Jordan on that. What else is standing out for you? The Edmonton Oilers. Either Connor is the best player on the planet, or they lose, Mac.
Well, that's what it is right now. I mean, it's that tough of the situation that if in fact he doesn't star and get a hat trick, they're in tough. The Red Wings are leading the Jackets 1-0, by the way. Jordan, go back to your reading your. Okay, no.
I was about to come in and tell you, but thanks for doing my job.
Go back to reading your James Patterson novel. I already got it.
I also a couple minutes ago, I got a confirmed age on Blake Wheeler. That's how we do things around here. 34 years old for the young gentleman.
34, Mac. 34. So I was right. 34 compared to a guy like Patrik Laine who's in his early 20s. Come on.
And hey, just another further update. One of your favorite players, Bobby Ryan, has scored for the Red Wings, his second goal of the season.
Good for Bobby Ryan.
You know what? I just going back for a minute to the Ottawa-Toronto game as we're talking Toronto. Kind of a concern in Ottawa today on Dadonov, where he was on the weekend. I don't know if he came down to Florida for the weekend or if he played. I didn't see him on the ice. They brought him in there to help their power play and to be a real important guy in their power play. And, they've got to figure out how to get this. He's a good player. And it was a good pickup for Dorian, but they've got to get this guy going, although it's early. So
they're shitting on him this early, Mac.
There's some rumbling. Ottawa is a great hockey town, a good sports town, and they just, they just were wondering where he was on the weekend.
They couldn't string 3 passes together. And
they were.
While I appreciate, the attention that Joe Thornton can get on whether he should be on the number 1 line or not, who the hell can really know after those 2 games on the weekend? Come on.
I'll tell you what, Joe wants to pray he stays on that line with those 2 guys. When they get it going, when Matthews and Marner get it going, and Joe's there with them, it's a perfect scenario for Joe.
You think we're back on Hockey Central at noon where we have to talk Leafs all the time? Come on, Matt.
I was talking Ottawa. You turned it to Toronto.
No, I was talking Oilers. You turned it to Ottawa.
Okay, the Oilers. Let's talk Oilers. I mean, it's Montreal. There was shifts in that game, and I know Carey Price had to be good, but there was shifts in that game where Montreal dominated that hockey team in the offensive zone, and pressure on the puck by the Montreal Canadiens. Again, I've been impressed with the play of Montreal. Edmonton had come back with a good win against Vancouver, full marks, but Montreal, to me, I don't know. I got them second in the North. It's gonna be
now. You want to bump them ahead of the Leafs?
No, I still have the Leafs as number 1, and they showed why we picked the Leafs number 1. They don't need a fight to win games. By the way, like, people thought I was serious when I tweeted that the other day. I was busting balls. I was having some fun, and people said, "Oh yeah,
If I said if this show has any lull in it, I'm sending Jill in to kick your ass to spark it up. So
anyway, I just
be ready.
They need a fight to get them going. But you know what? It was a little bit of tongue in cheek because of the hoopla around the Simmons fight. But anyway, we know fights can turn games around. We understand that
in certain instances, and that's where
Marner turned it around in this game.
We did agree that it was a little bit overhyped and oversold, but that's okay because that's what sometimes you need to do on national TV. We get that.
You know what it's like when you're in there watching the game and you've got to come up with something in 3 minutes to go on the intermission, and you got to make something up. We've lived it.
The good thing is you don't have to do that on this show anymore. So Matt,
we have to make stuff up here too.
Edmonton, probably Kenny Holland's a little disappointed. Dell gets claimed by the Devils, but he's going to have to figure something out. Koskinen seems to be their number 1 choice. Something's going on with Smith. He needs to find something else. They're also in a cash crunch as well, which isn't helping Ken Holland. Mac, I don't know
what he does.
I just look now. I look at, and I'm not certainly going to write off Barrie, right? Tyson Barrie in Edmonton, but the decision to give him $4 million when you had a bit of a cash crunch, and they tied up a lot of money in this guy, and I'm not sure what they think they are getting.
Well, it was when you looked at the money at face value of 3.75 for Barrie on a 1-year deal, you say, hey, that's a pretty good deal for a guy that was looking probably to make 6-7 when he went to Toronto. But he wasn't the type of player they needed. But Kenny at the time didn't know Klefbom was going to be out for the year. He probably had a pretty good indication, but he didn't know. He's not the type of guy they need because he's not very good defensively. This team is woeful at times defensively. You couple that with average goaltending and an inability to defend the way you have to defend on a regular basis. It's a twofold problem. It's goaltending, and it's also defensive play by both your defense and your forwards. It's a problem. It's a real problem. And if in Connor's got to win games by himself, he and Draisaitl, and it's not going to be easy.
Acquainted with us, but I think we're back up and running. We are back up and running. Just going to tell everybody in chat. We are back up and running. That's working at my words per minute right there. So, yep, you guys are back on the air. Sorry about the inconvenience. Get back to waxing poetic about how great each other are and stuff like that.
What did you say that blew up the cameras?
No. I actually enjoy you frozen. I think everybody did. Okay, so topic of conversation here, the Edmonton Oilers. I wanted to put Mac in a predicament here with Tyson Barrie. They did have options, including their first pick in the draft, Evan Bouchard. Now, would you have gone with Evan Bouchard just to hold that position at his cost, or would you have rather tied up $4 million in Barrie? And I say that because, of course, as a general manager, you want to do everything to protect an asset and not put him in positions of failure. But, Bouchard, you hope in a very short while could turn into a top 6 or 7 D.
Well, that's what you're hoping, and they're obviously disappointed at where Bouchard is at this particular stage in his career. Is it take time for defensemen? Sure, it does. Has he got a chance still to be look, when they drafted Bouchard, they expected him to be a top 4 defenseman, not a top 6, and maybe a top 2 when they drafted him. So they've got to hope that he comes quick. But again, I go back to Klefbom. How many teams in the league put the Toronto Maple Leafs in that situation, then losing Morgan Rielly for the season? Where would that put the Toronto Maple Leafs? I mean, it would hurt a lot of teams, and we've seen it in Montreal when they've lost Weber for extended periods of time. You saw it in Vancouver when they lose a Tanev and a Nedler. It's tough to overcome that. And yeah, you would look back and say, well, they shouldn't have signed Barrie, but at the time, they were probably hoping Klefbom would be there. Barrie would be a good power play guy, although I didn't like the fit from day one with Barrie there. I didn't think he was the right fit for a team that had why bring in Tyson Barrie when you already have the best power play in the NHL? Why?
That's a good point.
They already were the best power play without him.
Yeah. And we know 5-on-5, and then defensively,
he's average.
Not even sure, I'm not even sure at average. There's some decisions that he makes that you question. But his stock was high in Colorado. Leafs will look back and if there is a turning point where it went south on them, you don't look any further than Kerfoot and Barrie for Nazem Kadri. I mean, and it's a mental thing. Maybe it's physical. Is he even as quick as he used to be in Colorado, Mac? Has Barrie even kind of lost a step?
He doesn't look like the same player to me, but it's unfortunate. But they're in a bind in Edmonton, and they're going to have to figure it out. Kenny Holland has got 25 years experience as a GM. He's making big money. I mean, he's got two of the best players in the world. I mean, they've got to figure this out, but they've got to figure it out faster than. And I love Kenny Holland, but he's in tough right now for me. He's in tough.
You want to change your mind on Calgary Flames missing the playoffs?
No, I'm going to stay.
Markstrom did what he needed to do on the weekend. I can tell you that.
Well, look, it was a great showing by Markstrom. Vancouver start off, have a phenomenal first game against, Edmonton, and then, we're just pretty average. Calgary, full marks to Calgary. It's the same thing. When Gaudreau, Monahan, Lindholm want to play,
I don't know.
Kachuk's going to play. He's going to bring it, and Mangiapane and these guys are going to come.
Mangiapane right now and Dubois. Could be players that eventually take over for Monahan and Gaudreau in the next few years, Mac?
Well, they got big decisions if they don't have success this year with Monahan. I mean, we talked about Gaudreau and Monahan last year after the playoffs. I mean, there's big decisions there, but they played well against Vancouver the other night. They showed up, and if they do that and they play the way they're capable of playing, and Markstrom does the job he has to do, they're going to be in the mix. Is it going to come down to Vancouver and Calgary for the last playoff spot? It may very well. And the last game of the season, game 56, is Calgary in Vancouver for the last game with Holtby or Demko against Markstrom. And that game, wouldn't it be special if that game is a decider? I wonder if people are checking to see if I'm accurate on that.
Every game, like I said, a 4-point game.
Now, Miller's back tonight. Miller's a real important guy for the Vancouver Canucks. He comes back into their lineup. You know, they talked today. They had a different step when he was on the ice. You know, he is that important to them in their top six. So do we see a little different Vancouver team tonight? Markstrom, you know, he got his cookies. How is he going to be in game 2? You know, if he's anything like he was the last 2 years, he's going to be a star. He's been that good. But I expect a better Vancouver team tonight.
Many teams putting calls into Columbus on Pierre-Luc Dubois. We believe one of them is the Calgary Flames. You got to assume, Mac, if that's the case, then Monahan would be the guy to go.
Totally.
Would you think?
And maybe Monahan and Gaudreau for Dubois. I mean, Dubois all of a sudden has got, you know, people who doesn't want it. What is he, a 6'3" centerman?
6'3", 225.
And heavy player. And, you know, it's, I mean, if I'm Calgary, I'm on the horn. I'm on the horn trying to work out a deal to get him to change your group. Where does Dubois want to go? I mean, the $5 million is.
Would they take on that salary?
Well, they could if they move Monahan. If they move Monahan, it's perfect.
No, and Gaudreau.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if they could.
That would be too much, though, wouldn't it?
Well, then you got. I wouldn't take both of them. I would take Monahan, and you know he fits the bill.
Well, you try to go get Mangiapane or
right,
or
but
Dylan.
Somebody that can play in the top six. But you've got to make sure you've got to. Hey, listen, let's not forget. Dubois is up in 2 years. Jones is up in 2 years. Werenski's up in 2 years. Merlikin is up in 2 years. And Korpisalo is up in 2 years. Like in 2 years, the Columbus Blue Jackets' 5 best players.
David Savard. Savard's up in 2 years.
Savard's up this year, is he not?
This year, yeah.
So,
less than 2 years for sure.
You know, there's going to be some big changes in Columbus over the next couple of years, but they have got to wait this out and make the right deal on. I mean, Monahan, I'm not even close. Monahan for Dubois 1-for-1 for me. Not even close.
Not
close for me.
Yeah.
No. I'm going Dubois.
Calgary would have to sweeten the pot.
And you know what? You've got some good young defensemen there in Valimaki and Anderson. They're thin on their back end. I still think they're a little thin on their back end, but it would be intriguing if are you spreading that or is there some truth to it? You're saying I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm just telling you what I heard.
Thank you. My favorite line. My favorite line out of you. I'm not telling you the truth. I'm just telling you what I hear.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm just telling you what I hear.
There you go. Now, we know, Mac, that for every can't miss prospect, there's 99% of us that have to go through a development league. Like for me and many in the NHL, it goes through the AHL. So much unknown at this point. Who's in, who's out, who can afford it, who can't, what the players get paid. What are you hearing about the American Hockey League and the stories now that players, many of them, could end up getting 30 or 40% on the dollar?
Well, it's really unfortunate. I mean, you've got two groups of players in the American Hockey League. you've got the NHL contract players in the American League, and you've got AHL only contracts in the American Hockey League. The AHL only guys, the NHL teams are saying they can void those contracts. How the hell that can happen is beyond me, but they can void out a contract if their minor league team is not playing. And we know a few American Hockey League teams chose not to play. Some teams have joined up. So that's one problem. The second problem is NHL contract players have to face a prorated situation. So what if the American League only ends up playing 40 games? What is the prorated? Is it the 71% that the NHL contracted players get in the NHL, or is it prorated at the 40 games? I suspect, or what if they play 35 games in the American League? I don't know what they've actually come out and said they're going to actually do. There's some talk they're not going to play playoffs. It's just going to be strictly a development league, a place for prospects to play. It's a mess for
no playoffs and no Calder.
There's some rumblings that they haven't decided if they're going to have a playoff yet. I don't know if that's accurate.
Can
I'm
you
just
imagine
telling you what I heard. Is there going to be playoffs?
How can you go through? How can you play with no trophy on the line, no championship on the line?
Because they're biting the bullet to operate as a development league to give players a place to play in the regular season. I gotta believe that's not accurate, but there's been some rumblings that some teams are saying that they don't think there'll be a playoff. Seriously.
I don't even like the fact that players on two-way contracts on the taxi squad, end up with the American Hockey League salary. Like, I really believe, Mac, if you're one of five on a taxi squad and you're up with the team, you go to every meeting, you practice, you do everything except play the games, you should be paid your 72% of your NHL salary. Can you imagine now being paid your minor league contract and getting hurt in practice and, play the odds what you want, but you don't put anything past injuries in this sport.
Remember how sick I used to be when an American leaguer would come up from the minors and he'd play and get injured, and I had to keep him up for 2 months and pay him his NHL salary. Oh my God, that crushed me.
I know what you're guarding against, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah. But I just don't think it's right.
It was just a way to take some heat off the pressure on the owners. Also, but what's it do to the American League too? You talk about the American League. I know they don't have fans, but your five best players or whatever is the case, or 3 or 4 of your best players are up on the taxi squad too. So, it's going to be tough in the American League. It really is. But I feel for these players, like Larry Landon, the president of the Minor League Players Association. I mean, he was quoting Larry Brooks this weekend in the New York Post. I mean, seriously, there's unbelievable distress on these kids financially, emotionally, every which way you can imagine.
Well, he's not shy about telling everybody about the calls that he's taking from wives and families and agents and players saying, I can't afford my rent. It's cheaper to go work somewhere else and get another job. I mean, and listen, we know it's tough everywhere. We know it's tough everywhere.
It's tough everywhere. It's unfortunate. And then the comment about you're going to end up with four players staying in an apartment building together and in the same apartment, and COVID, and oh my God. So anyway, I don't know where this is going to end. And what was, somebody said it was I guess Larry said it was an $8 million nut for the NHL to cover this. So if that's accurate, I don't know. Anyway, it's an unfortunate situation. It really
$8 million to cover all teams, because I think we had this conversation about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, where you figured out it was anywhere between $500,000 and $750,000 that would cover expenses
for a 44 game, 33 to 44 game schedule. Yeah. So that's probably the number, because there's 30, I don't know how many teams are playing, but that's probably the number.
Yeah. And, Larry's got a tough job with the PHPA.
Yeah.
And much like Gary Bettman with the players, they agreed. They agreed to a deal. Gary tried to change crunch a few numbers. Players didn't want to. And now Larry's in the same position, I think, as well, where
totally.
You cut a deal. It is what it is. It's hard to go back and change a deal that you agreed to.
For sure. It's unfortunate.
All right. What else is on tap? Anywhere else you want to go? We said 10 games on tap, a couple of signature games, Winnipeg and the Leafs. Mac.
Mini are coming on.
Finding a way.
You know what? I'm anxious. I'm kind of anxious to watch. The big game I want to watch tonight is the Canucks and Flames and the Canadiens and Oilers again. I'm focusing on the Canadian division. I love watching it, but there's other, the Flyers have looked really good. You got the Sabres who have battled so far. They're playing Philly. Philly looks to me like a pretty good team. We got Jacob Voracek not happy with a media member in
Philly.
And the league apparently called them, and I'm thinking, okay.
So you're the general manager. You see that, Mac?
Yeah.
What do you say to Voracek?
Depends if I like the media guy. For a few media friends of mine, I'd be thrilled for him doing it. You know what? You got to talk to him. You can't. Mac, obviously there's a battle there.
There's a million reasons, probably, if you're on the hockey side, to say, "Way to go, Jacob."
Oh no,
stick it to him.
But you're getting a call from Bill Daly saying you got to speak to him, and you do a fake conversation.
Okay, but at the same time, you do like sometimes keeping internal issues like that, internal, not inside. You don't want to air, with a few F-bombs, but
it wasn't. Yeah, you don't like to see that. I kind of like
it's a little. You don't, and trust me, there's 3 or 4 guys on every team that could easily do that.
Oh, easily do it.
Okay, 3 or 4, and I'm not even going into the coaches.
And no, and not even the GMs who would absolutely love to be able to say it as well. And so
Sean Couturier goes down with an injury. Mac, he
tough
could
loss.
Be. Is it 2 weeks?
Loss.
Is it 4 weeks?
Yeah, that's a real tough loss. But I like what I'm seeing with the Flyers right now, and that's they're little, and it starts in goal with Carter Hart, and they're a pretty good team.
If Morgan Frost, first rounder for Philly a few years ago, if he can find a way to slide in there and get more responsibility. Yeah. Boston and the Islanders, 5:00.
Boston are in tough right now. Like I looked the other night, and I hate to say this, but I looked, and how I love Sean Corrali. He had more ice time the other night than Bergeron and Marchand. I think he was number 2 in forward ice time. So thing is, Bruins, they're in tough right now. When you lose 2 of your top 4 defensemen in Chara and Krug, you're in tough. I can understand why you had the Yandle situation there. I don't know if he's the right fit, but at least he would be good on their power play, although it doesn't need a whole lot of work. But Boston's in tough right now for me. This is a big test for Bruce Cassidy. He's had a pretty good team in his term there. He's got to do some serious coaching this year.
Hey guys, don't want to cut you off there as we're closing up, but our friend Chris Johnston from Sportsnet, I think, or is it TSM? Yeah, Sportsnet just tweeted Patrick Laine out tonight with an upper body injury, per our friend of the show, Paul Maurice.
All right, so So what had happened was
he left practice.
He left practice yesterday. He came on the ice today. Was not comfortable, and is out now. So
that's disappointing because you always love the Laine Matthews matchup. There's been great ones. That's disappointing.
Yeah. So Patrick Laine out, off to a terrific start. Both putting the puck in the net and having a physical presence, but they do have a heavy team. They will be hard on the forecheck again on that Toronto blue line that we see a little vulnerable.
Listen, I know how you like to get down to Florida. I really wish you were down here in Florida visiting with me this afternoon. I've got just a little job that I'd like to take you on. I'm not golfing, but
Yeah.
I'm going out to empty the septic on my motorhome. I thought maybe you'd like to join me and help me with that if you were down here.
I thought maybe you needed some muscle or something, you got some side deals going on the streets. What are you moving? Old VCRs?
I personally think that Kyper doing anything septic related would be great for the channel here at Line Movement. So everybody in the chat, let us know what your thoughts are on that. Sort of content.
God, can you film that so we can show it? I'd enjoy that very much.
It's kind of a shitty job.
I'm
Anyway, going to do it this afternoon.
People say well-deserved job on your end.
Good way to end the show.
Hey, and one more thought. I know after that first game, the Islanders beat up on the Rangers. You said, I made a horrible mistake writing off the Islanders to make the playoffs this year. I know it.
I know.
Okay?
I know. Yeah.
You still have them out?
I got them out.
Ugh.
I got them out. I may be wrong on that one, too.
All right. Try not to spill anything today.
I thought you'd like that.
Oh, God. That's just a horrible visual right now. All right. Doug Maclean, everybody, on the Real Kyper at Noon show. And that wraps up episode 66. Again, first-time watcher, subscribe to our channel. It's been a lot of fun with Mac, recapping the weekend. Slate of games tonight. Pick your favorite and enjoy. I'm Nick Kypreos. Enjoy the rest of the day.